Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Emily from Tribe Tropical. So Emily, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Dan. I really appreciate it. It's a real honor to be on your podcast. So my name is Emily. I am the founder of Tribe Tropical, which is a predominantly sun-safe swimwear brand for children and adults. So I have red hair, very fair skin. I've had a lot of issues with skin cancer, and my grandfather passed away from a melanoma. So sun protection is something that's quite close to my heart, I guess you could say. So that's why I started the brand, to help people keep safe in the sun. And then I'm based in a very small coastal town about 5 hours north of Brisbane called Bargara, in Queensland, Australia.
Yeah, so I'm curious more about your products, right? Because obviously there's many swimwear brands, but like yours is really focused on people who are sensitive for sunlight. So how does that work exactly for people who do have those kinds of sensitivities?
Well, I mean, we live in a country with the highest rate of skin cancer in the world. So it's really important to keep protected in the sun, not just for people with fair skin, but, olive skin people, dark skin people, everybody should be protecting themselves from the UV. Bob Marley passed away from a melanoma as well. So none of us are immune to skin cancer, basically. So yeah, it's just really important that we all keep safe with obviously sunscreen, sunglasses, hats, that kind of thing. But covering our skin with sun protective clothing is a lot more effective than just sunscreen alone. So that's where my products come in, because they are mostly long sleeved, and there is a lot of focus around the sun safety element.
So in terms of actually it's one thing to have the idea, but to actually go and develop and bring this idea to fruition. I'm curious about that sort, because obviously, I guess like you mentioned, it's a very personal thing for you. So what did that process look like to actually take that idea and build it into kind of where you're at today?
A good question, because I think until you start a business, you have no idea, how much is actually involved. I thought, I could do that, give it a go, and then, I didn't realize how tough it would be actually, but lots of learning along the way. But so basically at the time I had 2 young girls. I've now got 3 girls. So they were in our pool a lot. Our climate's very similar to Florida's. So it's hot, for most of the year. My children were in the pool. We live right by the beach. So, they're in the sun a lot. So I was just really worried about them, and the level of sun protection that they needed to keep their skin well covered. So, and I was just really struggling to find good quality swimwear on attractive prints. I just couldn't really find anything that I liked or they liked. So then I just thought, well, why not try and, start something and, try and create a brand from that. And so I just started contacting suppliers and just seeing what I could find. I had, a lot of samples sent to me. Even sampling is another thing. People don't realize there's a lot of expense in that. You're looking at, $50 minimum for one sample. So, there's a lot of expense in that initial testing phase. And then, sort of once I got into it, I realized that I wanted the prints to be inspired by tropical Australia. So not just, flamingos and dinosaurs and, things that you quite commonly find on kids' swimwear. Because when I started, it was for kids, right? I've since branched into adults. But so I decided I wanted to build a brand around, a tropical theme, an Australian tropical theme. And then it just went from there. So, yeah, that's kind of how I started, I guess you could say.
So as of right now, right, are most of your customers in Australia, or do you sell in the US? What does that breakdown kind of look like?
Yeah, predominantly Australia, but I have customers all over the world. I had an order recently from South Africa. I send a lot to the Middle East, the US for sure, Canada, it's worldwide. I ship worldwide, basically anywhere that we can ship to. There are certain restrictions. Saying that, I did send some swimwear to a lovely man in Israel a few months back, so we send anywhere that we can, basically. Right. But yeah, US for sure. It's we have some lovely customers in the US. I have some stockists in the US. So I also wholesale to the US, but it'll be interesting to see how that goes now with Trump's tariffs. I'm not sure how that will impact things, but yeah, time will tell.
So in terms of that, right? So are you mostly direct to consumer from your website or I mean, obviously that you just mentioned wholesale. So do you sell into retailers locally in Australia? What does that, that breakdown look like?
Yes, so predominantly direct to consumer, but I do have some stockists around Australia and the US, one in Denmark. I think that's it in terms of the wholesale. But my predominant focus is direct to consumer. I spend a lot on marketing, so I'm trying to reach, audiences, based on either interests or, letting the meta machine do its thing.
So when you're doing that, are you really just like focused on running ads in Australia or do you run ads like in the US too? I guess like I'm always curious like how people in these different countries could find you.
Yeah, that's a good question too, because at the moment I'm only running Meta ads and Google ads in Australia. My products are obviously seasonal, so in the coming months I will be changing that focus from Australia. I probably won't advertise as much around Australia, and then I will be focusing. Yeah, on last year I was focusing on the US and the Middle East. So
Okay.
I think it was around like May last year. I had a lot of really good traction in the Middle East because of the long sleeves. I was only advertising my kids' products there just because with women's sizing and so on, sometimes it can be a bit trickier. And I thought, well, I'm starting out running these ads. I'll just, try and do the kids targeting. And I have, long tights and shorts, and like a lot of it is quite modest and sort of conservative, I guess you could say. And so in the Middle East, that's what they like. So yeah, I had big orders, like, really probably 3-4 times my average order here is what I was getting there, to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, like a lot of the Gulf countries.
Oh wow.
So yeah, different clientele. And then what they like is different to what people here like as well. So for example, at the moment in Australia, there's a huge focus on this bright neon, water safe colors. Like mums just want bright orange and bright green and bright pink for their kids. Whereas in the Middle East, they don't. The bright stuff just didn't get much traction. Whereas some of my prettier prints for girls were what they were wanting. So yeah, it's interesting to see what different markets want.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about that, right? Because obviously, like in the U.S., English is, it's like it's super easy. But in terms of like in the Middle East, obviously many people do speak English. But do you run ads in Arabic? I guess like what does that look like?
I tried both. I tested both. I speak a little bit of Arabic, and I've worked for a Middle Eastern company, so I've had a lot of experience dealing with people from the Middle East. So yeah, a couple of my ads, like I did a reel kind of thing with some Arab music in it, and just to try and see if that might get traction. So it was a lot of testing, but as you know, these things cost a lot of money. So it's kind of like, how much do you spend? What
Right.
do you put into this? What's the return on investment for the ads? So that's where I'm like, yeah, I'll definitely, in the coming months, I will be dabbling again in the Middle East for my paid marketing. But yeah, I'm not sure about the US at the moment, just because I don't know what's happening with Trump's tariffs. And, if people have to
Right.
pay a lot to receive the goods, they might not want that. So I'll see.
Right, right.
But yeah.
So in terms of, well, I guess like yeah, like when you were testing like in the Middle East, did you find the ads in Arabic converted better, or the ones in English converted better? Like, what did you kind of notice from those ads?
I think it was the English ads that converted. So whether that was, looking at the names of the people who were buying, their names were like Middle Eastern names.
Right,
Sorry if that doesn't sound right, but it wasn't John Smith. But
right,
saying that, there are a lot of expatriate people living and working
correct,
in the Middle East. So that's why I was like, I didn't want to run them just in Arabic because, there could be someone from America living in Dubai who might want swimwear. So
exactly.
that's where it's like, oh, just testing different things.
Yeah, I mean, English is sort of the, you could say language of the world in 2025. I mean,
Yeah.
not most, but many people do speak it, especially like in the developed world. So I think from that standpoint, it's not a bad play to run ads in English. And I think on top of that, one thing, at least for me, especially if you're running ads in a certain country where English is not the main language, but if people see an ad in English that might sort of, bring their attention, say, oh, wow, like what's this? I usually see ads in Arabic. So it might also be
Yeah.
like it's like a way to grab attention.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like some of the copy on, like if I had copy in that in the ad, would probably be in English.
Right.
Sometimes I'll, muck around in Canva and create different graphics
Yeah.
with text on the photo, or yeah. So that was that's usually English. But yeah, it's all testing, isn't it? When it comes to
Yeah, for
ads. And
sure.
yeah.
And then like in the US, right? Like did you notice certain trend, maybe like certain parts of the country where people like were buying at certain ages? I guess like what was your focus for running ads in the US? Is it kind of similar to the way that you do it like in Australia? Or I guess obviously like, consumers here are different, and also consumers are different in different parts of the country because we are so big. So what
Yeah.
did you kind of notice there?
No real trends, to be honest. And I had orders from all over the country, from Rhode Island to like California, Texas, Florida. Like there were so many different parts of the country, like, and different things as well. Sometimes it was the women's swimwear, which they may, like someone may have clicked on an ad for their child and seen, got to the website and then found like a, something for themselves.
Right.
But I'm just trying to think. Yeah, it's a real mix. There's definitely no set pattern. I find with the copy, I will change a bit for the US to make it a little bit more like speaking to the consumer a bit more. I've lived in New York, and my sister lives in the US. She lives in Virginia. So, and I've got a lot of American friends. So I'm kind of, I know how to speak to Americans. I think. I mean, it's a little bit different, the
Right.
wording or things that we might say in an ad
Right.
targeting US customers might be a little bit different to what might be said in an ad targeting Australians, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, especially like spelling of certain words like a little bit different, and
yeah.
just some of the slang. But in terms of shipping, right? Like what is that? I mean, obviously like as you said, right, you can ship anywhere, but in terms of like being able to offer free shipping, are you able to do that? If people spend more in the US or in the Gulf, like what does that look like?
Yeah, so I've tried to keep my shipping pretty much a low flat rate worldwide, more or less, just so that, if someone was coming to the checkout, and then they see like a $25 shipping charge, they're going to be like, I'm not paying that.
Yeah,
No one
yeah.
wants to pay the shipping, right? But someone has to, unfortunately. So I try and absorb a lot of it. I think at the moment my US shipping rate's only like $5. That's really
Okay.
low. So yeah, I try and keep it pretty low, even though it will cost me probably at least 20 Australian to ship something to the US. So I do have to absorb quite a lot of it.
Right.
So that's where you go, when your customer acquisition cost, whatever that is for the US, plus your product cost, and there's so many expenses involved, right? So I haven't had probably enough either experience with it or time to really sit down and go, is this worthwhile?
Right.
If you're selling a swimsuit for whatever the cost is, you take the product cost, the marketing cost, the shipping cost, are you left with anything?
Right,
So it's
exactly.
tricky,
So
but I
how,
love testing of it all.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's always testing. It's always seeing kind of what works, what doesn't work. And I guess like on that note, right? Obviously, 2025, it's a new year, right? We're in February. So what are some of your biggest goals and objectives for this year?
I think, to be honest, to try to do a little less, like to work smarter, not harder. I think, I'm 6 years in now, and I've just worked so hard, like all year round. Like my business is seasonal. So I was like trying so hard to make sales and run ads and all the rest in these off seasons. And my husband said to me, that's like you trying to go fishing when there's no fish out, like when it's not season for that. So I think in the off months, which is pretty much now until April, May for the Middle East, US, Northern Hemisphere, it's just trying to work a little bit more on the business rather than in it. And then in those peak months, really working hard in and on the business. So yeah, I just, I was also part of an e-commerce group for the past 2 years, which was a huge investment, but I learned a lot. And through that, I was with an agency running my paid marketing. I left the agency and I ran everything in-house myself. And it's a big job, but it has given me a lot more control. But for the past 2 years, it's been a lot of study and work, and you're taking in so much information in order to do all of that. So yeah, I'm thinking I just want to work smarter, not harder.
But do you look
So
for things like, for example, if it's like off season, do you look to kind of do things that maybe like a lower hanging fruit, like email campaign saying, hey, like, spring break is coming up or whatever, things like that?
yeah, I should do more in the emails because that is low hanging fruit, right? But yeah, I don't know. I don't love to bombard people, so I don't send emails every week or
Yeah, yeah.
I tend to keep them to a minimum, and I tend to only target engaged subscribers as well. Like a lot of my audience, they'll reply to me, and you kind of get to know them, and they love the journey of me with the skin cancer, and they know I'm a mum. So there's a lot of people from around mostly Australia will reply and say like, I love this, that, and the other. There's a lovely lady in Canada that I've just got, to know over the years. And so I feel like my subscribers are kind of like family. So that's why I'm like, I don't want to bombard them. They'll probably come to me when they want swimwear. I don't know. It's,
Do you have like a Facebook group or some kind of group where you kind of like keep in touch with your fans, or what does that look like in terms of like communication?
Not so much a group. Like I have a Facebook page, Instagram page, and so on. But sometimes just via email and that kind of thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, to be honest, the other thing is I have been really time poor over the past few years because I've got 3 young children.
Okay.
I had my 3rd daughter. She was born within the year I launched. So I pretty much launched the business. And then I think it was 2 or 3 months later, I found out that we were having her. And so that first year in the business, trying to get everything established, get the website working. And at the time I was on WordPress, so that was driving me crazy. So moving to Shopify was the best thing I've done. But sorry, that was a side note. So having a newborn and then, her growing up, it's a real juggle. So that's where it's like, I feel like I have never had a lot of time to really put into this business. So that's the other thing, like having, this is the first time that all 3 of my children are in school. So I think I mentioned to you, right? My daughter just started school. Yeah. So now I have Monday to Friday school hours to pretty much, do what I want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that definitely makes a big difference. Yeah, I know I'm sure it can be hard to focus, when, kids are home and they need this or that. So,
yeah. And you're running to a different kindergarten or a different school or after school activities, there's just always so much to juggle. So that's the other thing. It's just finding time to do all of that, if you know what I mean. Like there's just so much you could do. Like, there's TikTok, there's, it's just like, where do you end with all of this?
Exactly.
So I just try
So I'm curious, right? Like speaking of like your journey, right? Because like you mentioned, you've been doing it for 6 years now. Like it's a pretty long time. So if you could go back in time to before you got started, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
Probably to start paid ads earlier, I think. I was relying on organic marketing for quite a while, and that's a lot of work, a lot of time. Whereas, and also running your own ads, like learning how to run Facebook ads, Google ads, and do it yourself kind of thing. I think that's one of the best things I've done. Yeah, so I guess I'd say go to Shopify. If you're an e-commerce store, Shopify, 100%. Klaviyo for email marketing. I was on MailChimp, so moving to these 2 platforms has been was a really great step. And then, just learning how to bring your ads in-house, do them yourself and have full control and just know where your money's being spent and when to turn things off and that kind of thing. I think it's really important. Yeah, so they're 3 of the biggest things, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, I think it's like even if you were to eventually, because you scale higher media buyers, like if you've done the ads yourself, it's so much better because then you can actually check their work and make sure that they actually know what they're doing. It's also pretty important.
Absolutely. That's the thing. Like if I was to go to an agency again, it would be, at least I could check what's being done or monitor things like frequency, CPM, things that you wouldn't usually check if you were just doing really basic ads.
Right.
And then, but I think the other key is creative testing. You need to have a lot of creative.
Exactly.
So that's where, it's another thing that takes a lot of time. Like my product range is really diverse right now. So, I need time to create things that men need, that women need, that kids need. There's hats, there's beachwear, bags and towels. And like, these are campaigns in themselves, right?
Right.
So it's like, trying to do it all.
Do you have like a roster of like influencers, or how do you kind of like get out so many creatives?
Different things. I've worked with a lot of different brand reps, more within the kids side of things. So they will send me content, which is great. I just try and create what I can. I have dabbled with a few different influencers. It's very hit and miss. Sometimes they can be really expensive and there's no return. So I'm kind of off that at the moment. I just try and get as much creative as I can, not necessarily from influencers, but from whoever. Even myself. I create a lot myself, my family.
Exactly.
So, and then that's what's needed for Meta, so.
Right.
I'm probably less focused on the organic side. Like that's good to have, but
exactly.
You've got to spend the money to make the money.
Exactly. So on that note, right? So like if somebody watching this here in the US or anywhere in the world wanted to buy your product, I mean, obviously we're in February, spring break is coming up, summer's around the corner. So if somebody's interested, what's your website and what's the best way for somebody to get in contact?
So Tribe Tropical, so TRIBE tropical.com is the website. And then Instagram is just @Tribe Tropical. And then just for contact, either So either DMs or there's a contact page on the website or email. Yeah, there's a few different ways. And then, yeah, it's just obviously low rate shipping. I think there's I forgot to check my cart at the moment for the US. I think I was running like, if you spend a certain amount, you've got a certain amount off. I was doing that last year, but then I forget, I have to check that. But yeah, there is an app I use for my cart, and at different times of the year, I'll try and, create different incentives. So kind of thing.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's lovely to chat with you, and enjoy the rest of your evening, right? It's evening over
Likewise.
there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, we're just starting our day.
Yeah,
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.